Same question I actually had. Will you revisit the story again at some point? Because again, I sort of felt like I wanted to know more of how Patricio and the family was doing. Um, has there been a lasting impact of your reporting? I would just also say, from the judge's perspective, that was part of the reason we were drawn to this story. Is it has had an impact not only in Sweden but throughout Scandinavia in terms of and throughout Europe in terms of galvanizing countries to actually pay attention to this issue and deal more forthrightly with foreign fighters that are their nationals. And one of the numbers, if we know, when it comes to Sweden more widely and in Europe.
Sure. I mean, in terms of future or further work on the subject, obviously it's a little bit harder now because of the access issues back in Sweden. I would love to. I mean, I would love to revisit the story in 10 years' time, you know, when these kids are grown up and old enough to decide, you know, whether they, you know, want to speak to a journalist. But in the near term, we don't have any plans to write anything else on it.
And what was it? The second part of the question is, what in terms of the impact you think your stories have? What was the most important thing for you in terms of setting an agenda or getting this issue raised? What was the most rewarding, I guess, is the question I'm asking, in terms of the impact that you think the stories have had?
Well, there was the impact in this, you know, within the context of this specific case, which, I mean, it's hard to, you know, we don't have really an insight into the room where the kind of Swedish officials made the decision to bring these kids back. So we don't really know what the tipping point was. But I think, you know, I think it's fair to say that the media had a pretty kind of instrumental role in compelling the Swedish government to bring these kids back. So that's kind of, you know, a direct consequence. In terms of the kind of, you know, the wider impact, it certainly, you know, prior to the case involving Patricio, only some French children had been repatriated following the fall of the caliphate last year. And since then, there have been sort of a flurry of repatriations, which are still, you know, only a fraction of the total, and are only really, have only been really in the case of orphans. It's a lot more complicated when it comes to the children whose mothers survived, because separating a child from their mother, you know, that is obviously, you know, different and has kind of implications in terms of international humanitarian law. So I think the last statistics, there are still around 8,000 foreign children in Syria. Since 2017 until last year, they've repatriated about 800, but 90% of those were repatriated by Russia, Kosovo, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, yeah.
Yeah. So still, I mean, the issue is, it looks like, I mean, the issue will remain for many years to come, and particularly now, obviously, with the coronavirus, it's completely or largely kind of stalled what little kind of effort or will there was towards repatriation.
Chad, why don't I turn it over to you to if there are people who put their hands up in the room?